Hi, my name is Steve Ann Smith, and I am your host for My Little Podcast. My Little Podcast is an interview-based podcast that explores the world of creatives through intimate and thoughtful conversations that seek to inspire and spark discovery through artistic curiosity. This show is for the community of artists, musicians, podcasters, journalists, authors, and content creators that find their purpose through art. We are all interconnected by our love for things we see beyond ourselves. This is my way of sharing our gifts with a larger audience in hopes of contributing to a future that sees life through joy, celebration, and prosperity. Allow us to share your story. Subscribe to My Little Podcast wherever you enjoy podcast listening. Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed specifically to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happen throughout the week. Big shout out to the Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. If you would like to support this channel, this podcast stream, the link is in the description of this episode. We have a couple of tiers. Check it out. Also, if you don't know, for years, I've had merch. There's also a link to that in my link tree. And for those that don't know, it is the final season of Wu-Tang and American Saga. I have decided to review the final season episode by episode with special guests. The last episode review that I did was with Eddie of the website Freed Styles. Check it out. It was the Liquid Swords episode, and I will have a new episode coming up pretty soon. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch it on my YouTube channel entitled Hip Hop Now Podcast. Just search YouTube and hit subscribe. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, XXL Mag, The Source Magazine's Twitter sometimes, and a couple of places where I get these stories from. I'm just going to tell y'all like this. It's been a slow news week. Last week, I recorded a full podcast, video and audio, just to find out that the audio was jacked up. There was no way to salvage or save it. So now I'm back. One of these stories are from last week. So what? Let's get right into the business. Sometime last week, Ebro made a big stink, or whatever way you want to characterize it, by saying that 50 Cent would wash Lil Wayne. And a lot of people piled on to the point where I kept seeing this debate or discussion, the following week. This week, if you're from the future, you already know what to do, man. Come on, you already know what happened. Get your ass out of here. We'll hit subscribe before you go. But I have my thoughts about it, right? Would 50 Cent wash Lil Wayne in the verses? Well, I think it really depends on what do you know a versus to be today, right? Little history lesson for those that don't know. Versus started out during the pandemic as something where you would watch two producers, two artists share 20 songs from their catalog, from their career, their best songs, that's what you would think, from their career, And it was sort of like a battle, right? You play one song, I play one song. You play one song, I play one song. And it was pretty dope. We were all on lockdown, and it was something to do for those that had the capability to enjoy it, right? I didn't watch many. I'm not going to hold you. Probably watched about 3 to be completely honest. But then as we started to come outside, right? It morphed into something else. It became more about not just the songs. It's still a battle, but not just the songs, but also the performance factor. Now, see, if 50 Cent and Lil Wayne were sitting at home back during the pandemic times and playing track for track, I think it would be a good back and forth, because when you think about it, they both have 20 songs to put up that would make the crowd go crazy from home, right? So that would be that. But now with this in-person thing, there are other elements besides performance, right? Performance-wise, I think Lil Wayne, and I'm just going off of what I remember, I don't know what he's like today, Lil Wayne is a better performer than 50 Cent. He just is. But 50's a better MC. When I say MC, I'm not just talking about rapping. I'm talking about 50's funny. You know what I'm saying? So I could see Ebro saying he would wash him just based off of the jokes in between the hits, right? But the other element that you have to think about that exists in Verzuz today is the fact that instead of playing a record from like Lil Wayne, for example, when Lil Wayne decides to play Bling Bling, well, from which I believe he's just only on the hook, he's not just going to play it at home like the old Verzuz and we go crazy because it's Bling Bling. No, he's probably bringing out the crew, the Hot Boys. That's different when you're in a setting. Lil Wayne's out there and the Hot Boys come out. Now the crowd's going crazy because the Hot Boys are here. Same thing with 50 Cent. Imagine if 50 Cent hits the stage, decides he's going to do a G-Unit record, but not only is Tony Yayo out there and Lloyd Banks, but, and I'm not saying this could ever happen, but maybe Young Buck pops out. Maybe Game pops out. And then the crowd is going extra crazy because all the drama between those guys and 50, and now here they are reunited on stage. It could be crazy. And they can go back and forth doing that with features and everything. You know, Lil Wayne could bring out Drake, Nicki Minaj, 50 could bring out Dre and Snoop and Eminem. It could be crazy. So when you say 50 Cent can wash Lil Wayne, I think a lot of times they're just thinking about the music itself and who's the better MC. And I feel like 50's the better MC. I know people think like Wayne is crazy, this crazy spitter, but he has a history of some really mundane ass lines that to me overshadow when he actually said something crazy. So I don't know. I think it would be quite even, to be honest, in that kind of a setting. So there you have it. Speaking of Verzuz, a while back, Jim Jones said he wanted a rematch with Jadakiss. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, well, Jadakiss had a Verzuz with Fabulous, and then the Lox had a Verzuz with Dipset. Jim Jones and Jadakiss never had a battle. No one cared that Jim Jones was making this request, but apparently Kiss cared enough to say that he accepts the challenge. Now I say to you, why Jimmy? For most people that like Jim Jones today, they just started liking him, right? That El Chapo or El Capo album, I think it was El Capo album he put out. And from what I heard from other fans, you know, the album before that and even some afterwards, Jim Jones has kind of stepped up as a MC you should look forward to when he releases a project. And I'm one of them. That El Capo joint was fire, right? And I did not expect that from Jim Jones. But Jadakiss already did a versus against Fabulous, which I thought was a fair matchup with those two. It's not fair with you, Jimmy, because as much as you have your hits, we're going to hit some of the same songs because Jim Jones does not have many, and I'm saying many, solo hits. He has Balling, We Fly High, No Lie. Like that is his biggest hit. Now he has songs that I like, but to a crowd that doesn't know, they're not gonna know some of those songs he would go to. He would have to go to features and bring out more Dipset stuff. Like it just feels like a retread. And if anything, it'd be different if it was Kiss versus Cam. Okay, now you're talking, right? Because before there was a Dipset, Cam was around. Cam already had hits. He already had something like Horse and Carriage. He could do Horse and Carriage and bring out Mace. And Mace can go over to Jadakiss joint. They could do 24 Hours to Live. So to me, Cam and Jadakiss deciding to do a battle makes more sense, but it only makes sense if the Lox and Dipset battle never happened. We don't want to see it. We don't want to see Jimmy versus Kiss. It happened. There's no rematch. It's over. Unless you plan to battle him straight up, you're not going to do that because it's just going to make it worse. People will forget about what Kiss did to Dipset and will only remember now what they did to you. So to me, I'm saying, okay, I know a bag comes with that. Maybe you need it. Maybe Kiss need it, but find another way because it can be embarrassing if no one is interested, right? It is, or at least I'm not interested. Let's just say that. For those who are on the hunt for some new hip hop to check out, listen to, vibe to, whatever you want to do, bars. Hit Boy released a new album called Surf or Drown, and DJ Drama this week released an album called I'm Really Like That. Both are essentially compilation style albums, but Hit Boy is actually rhyming on his. I don't think DJ Drama rhymes, but I doubt it. So let's start out with Hit Boy. My impressions. I think it's a good album. If you like Hit Boy as a rapper, if you like all of the variety of beats that Hit Boy produces, if you're only thinking about King's Disease and you're expecting to just hear King's Disease style beats only, you're going to be disappointed. But if you think Nas is all over this album, no, he's on one record. Currency's there, you know what I'm saying? He got a couple of features. It's pretty good. Hit Boy as an MC to me he sounds like every producer that is good on the mic, right? He's not bad. He's not terrible. He's good. But to me, the standout record, it's not the record with Nas. It's not the record with Currency, Dom Kennedy, when they used to call themselves Half a Mil, but I don't like to call him that because there was a Half a Mil. Shout out to him. Or rest in peace to him. The record I like, and to me, the record that's there that says, hey, I want to hear that, more of that, is Hit Boy and Alchemist. You saw the video, maybe if you're on social media, of them rhyming over each other's beats. Lo and behold, it happened to be an actual song on Hit Boy's album, and it sounds good. And it said to me, wow, if they could do an album together, right? Now, maybe not every track is a split beat situation, but, you know, you have that record. Maybe you have something similar where, you know, Hit Boy rhymes over Alchemist, Alchemist rhymes over Hit Boy's beat. But then you can have a track where y'all both rhyme over this person's production, that person. Maybe you bring in somebody else to do a track, right? One person to do a track. But it was a standout for me. And it left me kind of wanting at least an EP that did that. Maybe not a full-fledged album, but an EP with a couple of guests could be kind of crazy. I don't know what that would take, but it's definitely dope. I tweeted it. Hit Boy retweeted it, but he kind of retweets everybody's tweets, so it's good. Everybody gets to see it. Maybe the others who see my thoughts about them pairing together in this way feel the same way, and it pushes them to. I'm not trying to get credit for it, whatever, but I would like to see it. But again, the album is cool. You just have to be into Hit Boy as an MC. I do like the fact that he talked, or at least he mentioned it, more about being like Kanye's biggest protege, and speaking about that part of his career where he was at a point where he thought his career might be over. Like he thought his career might be over, and he did a couple of hits, got with Nas and went extra crazy, and now he's here. So it's a pretty dope album. I can't really give it a big glowing review, but my impressions of listening to it probably like 2 to 3 times is the fact that it's cool. It's not offensive. It's just a cool joint. When it comes to DJ Drama's album, I'm really like that. I don't really like it. Okay. And it's not bad. And I don't think it's even Drama's fault, right? Like if I'm not giving it a glowing review, I don't think it's because of him. I think it has a lot more to do with not having a bunch of features. I mean, it's a compilation album, so it is features, but not having features from artists who are so similar that the only difference is their name and maybe slightly the quality of their voice. And let me tell you what I mean, right? He has a ton of features on here. Little Baby's on here. Boosie's on here. Who else? Westside Gunn, Rick Ross, Fabulous, Benny the Butcher. Like he has a nice variety of artists. But I'm not gonna hold you. There was a point where I didn't check for Khaled albums until Major Keys, and I was like, yo, if all of these joints sound like this, then I'll be tuning in to see what's next. But there was a point in time where Khaled albums just sound like they were made for radio and made for spring break. Not a HBCU spring break, the spring break I'm talking about, which isn't a bad thing, but it always sounds cheesy to me, right? Well, with this, having similar artists, and when I say similar, I mean the trap artists who don't sound different from one another, right? They have the same flow, they have the same subject matter, same slang, and it don't matter where they're from, they're all using the same slang, same effects on their voice, and the only difference between them is if you know who's who, then you can hear the uniqueness in their voice, but it's not really that unique on the surface. A lot of that stuff on here is throwaway to me. Some of it, like most trap music, the production outshines the actual performance by the artists. And to me, when you have a compilation album with a ton of artists and a good half, if not most of that joint features artists that really don't sound no different from one another, you just move on after a while. After you've heard it, this joint will probably be something you check out for a week if they don't keep up the promotional campaigns, right? If a video don't come out or if a record doesn't catch fire, it could be forgettable. And I feel like this is a pretty forgettable album. Everything on here isn't whack, but for the most part, by the end of listening to it, and again, this is just my impressions, I just was kind of like, yeah. Because at the end of the day, with these guys sounding the same, well, what keeps me from just going back and listening to the versions of trap music I like, right? What's the difference? You know, if I like a certain Migos album and I listen to this, and I'm not saying that Migos is that type of group, but why not just go listen to that? Or if I like a current trap album from a trap artist and I know what to expect, or a drill artist. Why should I listen to this? It sounds like the same thing. And really, if I just like this dude and what he typically does, I might as well just go to his projects. So again, not necessarily trash. I like the Jack Harlow track, but at the end of the day, me watching all the hype and promotions behind DJ Drama's album, which he had to do, and I thought it was dope, but like doing campaigns to like dress up and reenact scenes from Juice, that wasn't a primer for what this is. Like, to me, that was more so get them to look at me, but it got them to get me to think about Juice, the movie, and Tupac. And that had no bearings on this album whatsoever. There's just no connection. So there you have it. You could like it, you could love it, you could dislike it, you could have never heard it before, but I'm just saying my impression is that it's cool. I'm not mad at you if you like it, but for me, that's probably it. Because it's a slow news week, but this ties into a couple of things I just said, and it ties into a couple of things I'm doing. If you've been a subscriber to this channel, or even to the podcast version, you know I've done what is called tier lists. And for those that don't know, tier list is basically this software where you can create a list, and most people use it to rank something, rank video games, rank best basketball player, rank films. I used it to rank albums within an artist's catalog. So I did Snoop, I did Jay-Z and Nas, I did who else? Ghostface, I did Eminem, Common, and it's been a while. So I thought, 50 years of hip hop, who else could I do that would be interesting, not only for you, but for me as a hip hop head? So I decided to do Redman and Method Man. And that video and audio will be coming soon. I'm just taking my time listening to the music, making sure, I remember things the way I remembered, albums I hadn't heard, making sure I listened to them. But it got me thinking about going back and listening to hip hop. Social media, in particular hip hop Twitter, will have you think that everybody goes back and listens to all the classics they talk about every day, all day. Some of them do not. They just like to head into Twitter and Instagram and just debate to death about what they remembered, or in some cases, what they don't know, right? Me, I have always been, this is from day one, I've always been the type of cat to not always listen to new music. If there's something hot and it's new, trust me, it's on heavy rotation. But to listen to, like classics and older joints I loved and other records. I mean, you see the records behind me if you're watching on the video. You see Into the 36 Chambers or Into the Wu-Tang. It's not like the last time I heard that joint was 93. The last time I heard that joint was a couple of months ago, because I go back and listen. Same thing with the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which is over here on this side, but for some reason the video is showing something backwards. That's weird. I'm in the Matrix. So over here, let's do that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, maybe some of these hip hop fans and hip hop heads don't go back and listen in the ways I thought they did. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that goes back and actually listens, and not listen off the strength of, having been prompted by something on social media, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I know very few that will say, you know what, let me go listen to this classic album from 88 or 91, or an album that I kind of like but haven't heard in a while. I think the benefit that we have for those who can afford it, if you have a streaming service of choice, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever it is, you have access in most cases to not only the catalogs of your favorite artists, but anyone's. And I found for myself, there were times back in the days where I had to make some tough decisions. I got $10. I can only afford one album right now. And I want these three. Which one of these am I going to go with? And I used to do research. What did the source give it? What did the dude I know who has it give it? Blah, 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 because I only had the $10. And some of those albums I wound up getting eventually back then, and others, time took over and I never heard them until recently. So, streaming services is a benefit for those who like to go back. Me, I have a lot of music and I digitize my music, and now it's with me everywhere I go. I carry it on my phone. It's on everything, right? I can access it anywhere over the internet. So me going back and saying, well, I'm not going to listen to 444. I'm going to listen to In My Lifetime Volume 1 today, or maybe Dynasty album, or maybe I'm going to go to, Tupac's Greatest Hits. It doesn't matter what it is. Scarface, The Diary, whatever. I do this all the time because sometimes you haven't heard it in a long time. It's, maybe you're curious if you still like it, or maybe that feeling comes right back. So to me, I'm just saying, I'm good when it comes to listening to older music, classics, new music, unreleased music I've never heard before, whatever. But I would encourage you, 50 years of hip hop, to do the same, right? It's cool that you talk about it. It's cool that when De La Soul's catalog hit streaming services, most people were prompted to listen to all this older music. But I would say, what's stopping you from listening to albums you used to love that maybe you haven't heard in a very long time? Maybe you've been hearing the singles from this particular album for years. Like, I'll give you one example before I get up out of here. Biggie, or the Notorious B.I.G.'s Life After Death. Now, over the years, I've heard it, but I got to be honest, I couldn't remember the last time I went from track 1 on CD 1 to the final track on CD 2, just straight through. That might have been back in 97, 98, right? Because Big had just died. This was his new stuff, and everybody was listening to it. I kind of feel like that's one of those albums where I get that nostalgia, and and the anniversary just passed, and I was like, damn, well, maybe one day I should just let it rock from beginning to end. And when I did, it took me back to when that album dropped. And Ready to Die I listen to all the time, multiple times a year, to be honest. It's just when I want to hear some Biggie and it's album wise, I go to Ready to Die. It just happens that way. I don't dislike Life After Death, but there's just something about that album that makes me choose the other over that. And it might have been the age I was and the circumstances surrounding it. And I was happy to listen to it because I had forgot some of the other tracks that I hadn't heard in a while. So again, call yourself a hip hop head. Maybe you already do this. Maybe watching the Wu-Tang series got you listening to all Wu this entire time. All of it's good. I just say hip hop is the number one streaming service genre, right? Streaming service, the number one streaming genre. You see, genre of music, and I think it's important that the older material receives streams as well, because don't think for 1 minute that all those streams that made it the number one genre are just 90s music. No, it's a lot of this new stuff that's bolstering that number. And somebody, whether it's the people in the record industry who curate and create and promote the music, it's important for them to see statistics on older material. You know why? Well, then you get special editions and you get vinyl and you get all these other things for the albums you love beyond the anniversary. We want that. We want to celebrate hip hop. We don't want it to just be about what's happening now. But if you use a streaming service, why not? Go listen to a couple of classic joints. Go listen to some joints you always hear. Classics, maybe you never heard it. It's worth it. Bars. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Vegas World INC. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment, like the video if you like it, subscribe if you love it. Please know, leaving your comments in the comment section below will get me to read and like and pin and sometimes even respond to your comments, because this is not a discussion of one. This is a discussion to open up other discussions amongst hip hop heads like yourself. Also know that this podcast is available on any podcast streaming platform. All you got to do is search for the words Hip Hop Now Podcast, subscribe, stay locked into weekly hip hop content. We got 2 more episodes of Wu-Tang and American Saga. That means I got 2 more reviews coming up, so stay tuned for that. And remember, I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.